My wife Gigi and I have been together for about 4 years now, and up until recently, I honestly thought our relationship was close to perfect. We've always shared a lot of the same interests, things like playing video games late into the night or heading out for camping trips whenever our schedules line up. Both of us have stable, good-paying jobs, and from the very beginning we agreed that kids weren't something either of us wanted in life. One of the things that drew me to Gigi the most was her independence. She never relied on anyone else to define her happiness, and that kind of self-sufficiency was exactly what made me fall in love with her. After dating for about 10 months, we decided to move in together, and everything seemed natural, like the pieces were falling right into place. We were always open about our pasts, and she knew early on that I had no tolerance for cheating. It's something I've always hated, probably my biggest deal breaker. Gigi claimed she felt the same way. She once told me about how her ex had shattered her heart after she caught him cheating with an old flame, and hearing that made me feel like we were completely aligned on our values. Loyalty mattered to me, and in the beginning, she seemed just as committed. But once we got engaged, I started noticing a shift in her. One night, while we were drinking together, she brought up something that caught me completely off guard. She asked what I thought about the idea of each of us getting a free pass. At first I didn't even understand what she meant, but then she explained, basically, a free pass meant you could sleep with a celebrity or someone you found extremely attractive, and it wouldn't be considered cheating. The whole idea felt ridiculous to me. I laughed and told her that I'd never even considered something like that. To me, a free pass is just another word for cheating, and I told her straight up that if she ever wanted one, I'd rather she just left me altogether. She went quiet after that, and we kept drinking like nothing happened, but deep down I think that was the first red flag I chose to ignore. A few months later, another situation came up. Gigi told me about this colleague of hers, a guy who she admitted was attractive and who had been pestering her to go out with him for a while. She said that at an office party, she finally gave in and kissed him, supposedly just to get him to stop bothering her. According to her, she felt guilty about it afterward and wanted to come clean, but her friends convinced her to stay quiet because they thought I wouldn't understand. My first thought was that this guy had basically harassed her, and I immediately told her to report him to HR. I even said she should consider filing a formal complaint because what he did was serious. But instead of agreeing, Gigi brushed it off like it was nothing. That alone made me suspicious. I asked why she was even telling me if she didn't think it was a big deal, and her answer completely floored me. She said she wanted to see me spring into action, like confronting the guy myself, because that's how her exes used to handle things. She told me it felt unattractive that I suggested going through HR instead of taking matters into my own hands. Then she added that maybe I didn't love her enough, and that if the roles were reversed, she would have confronted another woman for me without hesitation. I couldn't believe how twisted her logic was. It felt like she was manipulating the situation, trying to frame my level-headed reaction as weakness or a lack of love. I reminded her that I wasn't her ex's and that I wasn't about to throw punches when there was a professional way to handle it. But she kept pressing, turning it into some kind of test of loyalty that didn't make any sense. Finally, I told her flat out that if she didn't report it to HR, then I'd have no choice but to assume she kissed the guy willingly and that, in my eyes, would be cheating. I also made it clear that I couldn't marry someone who thought that was acceptable. That's when her expression changed from angry to shocked, and she asked if I was serious. I told her I was dead serious. We went back and forth for a while, with her arguing that people at work would see her differently if she filed a complaint. But I didn't care. If what she told me was true, then protecting herself should have mattered more than appearances. In the end, she finally went to HR, and sure enough, the company treated it as a major issue. The guy ended up being fired, and they reassured Gigi that she had done the right thing. For a moment, I felt relieved, like she had taken a stand. But about a week later, I got a message from a stranger. He claimed to be the same colleague Gigi kissed. In the message, he insisted that she kissed him out of her own free will and that he never pressured her. He also said she never wore her engagement ring at work, and none of her friends ever mentioned she was engaged, so he thought she was single the entire time. He told me he didn't want anything from me, he just wanted to explain his side and apologize for what happened. I ignored the message. After all, he'd been fired, and I had chosen to believe Gigi over some random guy I didn't know. At that time, trusting her felt like the only right choice. 2 months later, Gigi and I got married at our dream venue. It was a beautiful ceremony, surrounded by both of our families, and exchanging vows with her felt like the start of a whole new life together. Our early days as husband and wife were incredible, everything felt easy and full of love. But that sense of peace didn't last. One afternoon, while she was out grocery shopping, I stumbled across something on her laptop that stopped me cold. My own laptop was charging upstairs, so when I needed to check our flight details for an upcoming trip, I grabbed Gigi's. She had Safari open, and under frequently visited I noticed a Reddit profile. Out of curiosity, I clicked on it, not expecting anything serious. That single click ended up shattering the way I saw my marriage. The account turned out to be hers, something she had never mentioned to me. As I scrolled, I realized she had been trading inappropriate pictures with some stranger online. Every photo she posted had her face cropped out, and his did too. Their messages weren't romantic in the slightest, there was no affection, no tenderness, just straight-up sexual exchanges. What cut the deepest was seeing her talk openly with this man about our own sex life, like it was some casual topic to share with a complete stranger. When she walked back in from grocery shopping, I confronted her. The second she realized I had found her secret account, her face drained of all color. I demanded an explanation because the images made me sick to my stomach. For a long moment she just stood there, eyes darting around nervously, before she finally admitted the truth. She confessed that she got a thrill from sending photos to a stranger, that she found excitement in conversations she knew were forbidden. She compared it to watching porn, saying it meant nothing and that it wasn't like she was in love with him. Her defense was that the pictures had no faces, so he would never know who she really was. I couldn't wrap my head around her logic. I asked her straight out if she was doing this because she wasn't satisfied in our marriage. She quickly shook her head, almost desperately, insisting that wasn't the case. With tears in her eyes, she begged me to see it as nothing more than a stupid, embarrassing mistake. She promised to delete the Reddit account immediately and kept repeating that she loved me, asking me to just move on. Every part of me wanted to explode in anger, to scream about how betrayed I felt, but instead I went silent. I needed time to process, but the damage was already done. No amount of words could erase what I had seen. From that point on, our intimacy took a serious hit. I struggled to feel any desire toward her. Being vulnerable with her again felt almost impossible, and every time she tried to close the gap between us, my mind replayed the images and the filthy conversations I had read. The betrayal hung in the air, poisoning everything. Just as I was barely trying to deal with that, life delivered an even bigger blow. One morning at work, I got a call saying my parents had been in a terrible car accident. They were both in critical condition. My world crumbled instantly. I dropped everything and raced to the hospital, clinging to the hope that maybe things weren't as bad as they sounded. But the doctors didn't sugarcoat anything. Both of my parents were on life support, their organs failing, and their chances of survival were less than 50%. I sat in that waiting room for hours, praying for a miracle, begging for any sign of improvement. Gigi did come to the hospital, sitting quietly by my side and holding my hand, but all I could focus on was the heart-wrenching updates from the doctors. Eventually, my mother passed first. Not long after, my father followed her. The only small comfort I found was knowing they didn't have to live without each other. When the news hit, I collapsed right there, crying until my body couldn't produce another tear. My heart felt shattered beyond repair, and I had no idea how to keep living without them. Their funeral was one of the hardest days of my life. I could barely keep myself together in front of everyone. To her credit, Gigi took care of everything, allowing me the space to mourn while she handled the arrangements. Afterward, I shut myself off from the world. I was swallowed by grief and depression, lying in bed for hours, sometimes all day, with no strength to even complete the simplest tasks. My parents had been my foundation, my constant support, and losing them left me feeling like part of my soul had been ripped away. Later, I met with their lawyers. I expected them to tell me about the usual estate matters, but what I didn't expect was the sheer amount. My parents had left everything to me, and the combined assets totaled about $2 million. The number stunned me, but it only deepened my sorrow. They had worked tirelessly their whole lives and never got the chance to enjoy the fruits of their labor. I couldn't even bring myself to tell Gigi or anyone else in the family about the inheritance. At that point, my head and heart weren't capable of thinking about money. What I did know was that I needed a break from work. My boss, who respected my years of loyalty, kindly agreed to give me as much time off as I needed to grieve. 2 weeks after my parents passed, when I was still trying to pick up the pieces, Gigi came to me one evening. She said we needed to talk. We sat down in the living room, and instead of comfort or patience, she looked me dead in the eye and told me she was sick of watching me mope around, that it was time for me to get my ass up. She told me straight up that I needed therapy, that the way I was grieving wasn't normal, and that no one mourns their parents for as long as I had. Then she told me to man up and stop crying. The cruelty of her words stunned me. I tried to reason with her, explaining that grief isn't something you choose or control, and that mourning your dead parents for a month is completely normal. I even reminded her how she had spent months devastated after her childhood dog passed away, and I never once judged her for it. So, she had no right to belittle me for mourning my own parents. Instead of softening, she got angry, muttering about how unattractive it was to see me cry. We went back and forth, but eventually she dropped the subject. I thought that was the end of it. Not long after, my cousin Joseph messaged me to check in. We'd grown up close, so it wasn't unusual for him to ask how I was holding up. But then he blindsided me with a strange question: was Gigi and I separated? Confused, I told him no, that we were still very much together. At first I chalked it up to simple curiosity. But then Joseph called me immediately, and when I picked up, he told me something I never expected to hear. He said he had just seen my wife leaving a hotel with a man. According to him, the two of them hugged tightly before going their separate ways, and it wasn't the kind of hug you give a friend. That's why he asked if Gigi and I had split. I assured him we hadn't, and that I'd talk to her about it once she got home. But Joseph, ever the cautious one, told me not to confront her directly. He suggested I look through her phone first, because if she was already sleeping with this guy, she'd probably never admit it. I hated to admit it, but his logic made sense. After all, Gigi had already kissed a coworker and traded explicit photos with a stranger. It wasn't paranoid to think she might be hiding more. So I decided to do some digging before saying anything. I combed through her phone and laptop, but found nothing, no suspicious texts, no calls, nothing that proved Joseph's story. I started to wonder if maybe he had been mistaken. That weekend, though, my suspicions came roaring back. We were sitting on the sofa watching TV when I heard a phone buzz. I checked mine, it wasn't me. I glanced at hers, nothing there either. She noticed me looking around, and almost immediately, she excused herself to the bathroom. That's when it hit me. What if she had another phone? When she came back out, I noticed the shape of a phone bulging in the pocket of her sweatpants. That confirmed it. She had a second phone I knew nothing about. The fact that she hid it from me was shady enough, but the way she rushed to the bathroom right after a message came through made it painfully clear something was going on. This time, I didn't want to confront her blindly. I wanted proof. I wanted to catch her in the act, and I wanted to hear the other guy's side of things. So I called Joseph, and he immediately backed me up. He reminded me of the hotel he had seen her at, and we put together a plan. For days I staked out the place. Monday, nothing. Tuesday, nothing. Wednesday, still nothing. I started to think maybe she had switched locations. But Thursday came, and my worst fears were confirmed. Around lunchtime, I saw her walking into the hotel. A man followed close behind, and he looked vaguely familiar, though I couldn't place him at first. I waited 15 minutes, then walked inside and told the receptionist I was waiting for someone. He offered to call the room, but I waved him off. I didn't need a phone call, I needed to see it with my own eyes. 40 minutes later, they came down together. Their faces were flushed, full of that post-adrenaline glow I knew too well. My heart sank. I forced myself to approach them, my hands shaking with anger and betrayal. When Gigi spotted me, her eyes went wide, and she froze in place. Before she could open her mouth, I held up my hand to silence her. I didn't need excuses, I had seen enough. Turning to the man beside her, I asked if he knew who I was. He nodded and said he had seen me before at the office Christmas party. Then he dropped a bomb. Gigi had told him I was her ex-husband, that we were separated. He swore he never would have gotten involved with her if he knew she was still married. I asked if he worked with her, and he nodded. That's when the rage boiled over. Once again, my wife had cheated on me with a coworker. Without another word, I turned around and walked out, leaving them standing there stunned. On the drive home, the reality sank in like a crushing weight. My marriage wasn't just broken, it was destroyed. The woman I trusted most had betrayed me again, and there was no coming back from this. When I got home, I immediately started packing my bags, fueled by anger, heartbreak, and exhaustion. Not long after, Gigi stormed into the house, breathless from following me. She found me upstairs shoving clothes into a suitcase and wasted no time confronting me. She broke down in front of me, saying she had made a terrible mistake and begging me to forgive her. She claimed she had been feeling unbearably lonely and, in her desperation, lied to her coworker by telling him we were separated. According to her, she didn't want to be labeled as the office's cheating wife. She swore she had wanted to confess everything to me for a long time but had been terrified of how I'd react. I couldn't take it anymore. I shouted at her to get out of my face, because hearing her excuses only made me angrier. Deep down I knew that if I hadn't caught her red-handed that day, she would have kept sneaking around with him. Then she switched tactics. Instead of apologizing, she turned it around and tried to pin some of the blame on me. I froze mid-pack, staring at her, stunned that she even had the audacity to suggest I was at fault for what she had done. She said I hadn't touched her in months after I found her Reddit messages, and that even after my parents passed, I'd pulled away physically. Her words made my blood boil. I yelled back that she had no right to dump her guilt on me, that her infidelity was a choice she made regardless of what I was going through. But she kept pushing, cutting into me with her words. She accused me of neglecting her, of failing as a husband, and even called me boring for grieving my parents. Then came the final insult. She suggested that instead of walking away from our marriage, I should try to see her perspective. She went as far as to say we should open the marriage and that I could go date other people if I wanted. I couldn't help but scoff. I was so done with this woman. I zipped up my bag, told her she'd be getting divorce papers soon, and walked out. For now, I'm staying with my cousin. Gigi has been blowing up my phone, sending message after message, some apologizing, others blaming me for ruining everything. She keeps insisting I should see it from her side and forgive her because she was just lonely. So here I am, wondering if I'm the one at fault. Did I somehow push my wife into cheating simply because I was grieving? Update 1. When I posted my story, I never imagined it would get so much attention. Seeing over 300 comments has been overwhelming. Honestly, I didn't think my situation was even that interesting, but watching the debates in the comments has been eye-opening. To those saying I pushed my wife to cheat because I didn't sleep with her, let me just say this: I hope you never find yourself in the position I was in. I loved my wife and trusted her. So when I discovered she was sexting a stranger, it broke me emotionally and mentally. I couldn't just flip a switch and sleep with her as if nothing had happened. And then, when both my parents died just 2 weeks later, intimacy was the last thing on my mind. Grief affects everyone differently. Losing my parents crushed me, and if my wife couldn't remain loyal during that time, if her first instinct was to run to someone else, then that's on her, not me. At first, I did feel guilty. But after talking with my cousins and reading the more thoughtful comments, I'm convinced this is 100% on her. Cheating was her choice, plain and simple. I've already spoken to my lawyer, and the divorce is moving forward. I also spoke with her parents, who had no idea what she'd done. She had lied to them, saying I walked away because I couldn't handle my grief. Once I told them the truth, they were furious with her and told me they fully supported my decision. Update 2. It's been 5 months since I last posted, and I finally have a happy update. The divorce is official. Gigi tried to go after my assets during the proceedings, but thanks to my lawyer, we proved she cheated, which protected me, especially the $2 million inheritance my parents left me. She had no clue about that money until the divorce. Once she found out, she tried arguing she was entitled to half. The judge shut her down immediately. Since then, I've wasted no time moving forward with my life. Shortly after moving out, I met an incredible woman named Sarah on Bumble. She's a single mom with a wonderful little boy named Jerry. Sarah lost her husband a year ago, so she understands grief in a way few people can. We've built a deep connection, finding comfort in each other's shared experiences of loss. What Sarah and I share now is a mutual desire to build a warm, loving home for our families. She's one of the hardest working people I've ever met, and her resilience inspires me every single day. I admire the way she raises her son on her own with so much strength. Jerry is a ball of energy, curious, full of life, and getting to know him has been nothing short of a joy. I feel lucky and incredibly grateful that both of them have welcomed me into their world. In the meantime, I've moved out of my cousin's place and into a condo of my own. I've also gone back to work, not because I need the paycheck, but because I enjoy what I do and didn't want to sit at home with nothing to occupy my mind. It's taken some adjustment, living alone, but honestly, I don't hate it. Sure, it gets lonely at times, but I'd much rather live with peace than share a home with a partner who betrayed me. I've also started therapy, which has been helping me process both my parents' passing and the scars from my marriage with Gigi. I miss my parents every day, and I hope they're proud of me for finding the strength to walk away from a toxic relationship. I know my mom especially would have been furious at Gigi for cheating, and that thought alone makes me feel like I honored her by refusing to settle. A lot of people messaged me after my first update, urging me to get tested for STDs. I did, and thankfully, the results were negative. That was a huge relief, to know I hadn't been exposed to more pain on top of everything else. Even after the divorce, Gigi kept trying to reach out, calling, texting, apologizing, sometimes even blaming me. I told her clearly that I had forgiven her, because holding on to bitterness only chains you to the past. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. When she tried to meet up after the divorce, I shut it down immediately. I told her point blank that I had no interest in revisiting what we once had and that it was time for both of us to move on. Update 3. It's been 3 months since my last post, and since a lot of people asked for an update, here it is. I recently proposed to Sarah, and she said yes. We're officially engaged, and I can't even describe how excited I am to start this new chapter with her and Jerry by my side. But of course, drama has a way of following me. Apparently, Gigi has been stalking us online. I didn't realize it until Sarah posted our engagement pictures. That same evening, Gigi tried calling me over and over. When I didn't answer, she sent a string of texts claiming Sarah was a gold digger who didn't really love me. I blocked her. Then came a long-winded email. In it, she accused me of tricking her during our marriage, blamed me for destroying everything, and claimed I had broken her heart by not giving her another chance. She even begged me not to marry Sarah, insisting Sarah was wrong for me. According to her, she couldn't believe I had managed to move on so quickly and that Sarah was getting a better version of me. She ended it by saying I was the one who got away. Honestly, I just felt exhausted reading it. The same circular blame, the same refusal to take responsibility. I blocked her on Gmail, and I can only hope she doesn't make a new email just to harass me again. Looking back, I realize now I wasn't the one who got away. I was the one who escaped. I'm grateful that I managed to free myself from a marriage built on lies and betrayal. Now I have the chance to live on my own terms, with a woman who loves and respects me for who I am. With Sarah, I've found something real, genuine, unconditional love, grounded in trust and mutual respect. Together, we're building a future full of laughter, love, and endless possibilities. For that, I am truly thankful. And to anyone out there going through something similar, here's my advice: never settle for less than you deserve. Trust your gut. And don't be afraid to walk away from someone who doesn't value you. Life is too short to waste on people who don't appreciate your worth.